So season 1 is coming to an end, finally. And everyone is releasing their own tier list. I released mine, released a couple of them, done mine, and then I've done one live for fun with Chad the Third. And I've seen Blackheart did one, I think Buff Guy, was doing one the other day in live stream. And basically everyone is doing the season 1 tier list because it's fun. At the end of the day, tier lists are what they are. Are they mathematically correct? No. Are they fun and they give you a kind of perspective to analyze some of the things and problematics of the game? Yes. So, well, I thought, because I love to do them, let's make something more. Let's make something that is a bit more, accurate. So, I was thinking, how can I do the most precise tier list that no one can attack without having the competence of Arslan-Ash, the knowledge of Ulsan, or even just the competitive skill of Rangchu? Well, these three names are not, I didn't show these three names are random, because what I wanted to do at the end of the day is taking the tier list of these three top players and combine them together in a kind of more mathematical way, and try to create what is the most accurate, the most perfect, even if it will never be, tier list that there is on Tekken 8. Here it is, the spreadsheet, as usual, is back, and as usual it has a lot of numbers on it. As I said, I combined the three tier list of the three top players and that I mentioned before, Rangchu, Arslan-Ash and Ulsan. I didn't pick these players randomly, I picked the players that won the most important tournaments of the year, with Arslan-Ash winning EVO Vegas, Ulsan winning the eSports World Cup, and Rangchu being the last winner of the Tekken World Tour with Kuma. So obviously this is not a perfect method, but I really try to find out the perfect way, the most authentic way to combine these three tier lists without coming into problems. And for every little humps that was getting in my way, I always took my time to find a solution that was more or less as kind of mathematical as it could be. So the first thing I wanted to do is separate the tiers. So all the tier lists, they had 5 different tiers, apart from Rangchu's one, which had 6, with Kuma being the top one, alone. For the sake of this, I took Kuma and I brought it down to just the S tier instead of having him on his own rank. But just to let you know, I made the same calculation quickly as well, without doing this modification. It would not change the result in any way, shape or form, so we are good with that. To separate the tiers, what it is, I created this first part of the table here, okay, which I'm gonna zoom into now. So in the first part of the tier, you can see in the left column, obviously, you have the characters, and the 3 column that goes horizontally, they represent Ulsan, Rangchu and Arslan-Ash, the 3 players. As you can see, there are numbers representing every character here. Now, what this number represent is kind of a point system. Each point gets assigned depending on which tier the character gets allocated by the pro player. So let's take the instance with Jin, which is the first one. Jin in Ulsan is considered S tier, in Rangchu is considered S tier, in Arslan-Ash is considered S tier. S being the top tier, I counted it as 5 points, the max. And the difference in points is very simple. The higher the tier, more points you get. So if S is 5 points, A is gonna be 4, B 3, C 2, D 1. And after I've done this, in the total column, obviously you get the total sum of the points. And as you can see, Jin and Yoshimitsu, as everyone are largely considered S tier. And as you can see, the three top players agreed on that, giving them S tier and S tier and S tier, so 5 points, 5 points, 5 points, with a total of 15. If we go a bit down and we get someone like Jack 8, which is different considered, or let's do Lee, which has 3 different values. Lee is considered B tier by Ulsan, so he scores 4 points, is considered C tier by Rangchu, so he scores 3 points, and is considered, well, D tier or trash, E tier or trash by Arslan-Ash, and he scores 1 point. And then you sum them together and you get 8 points in total. This said, now you can see that I color coded different points of the tier list, of the different totals in the column, and this because basically is as well to give you already a visual representation of which character fell in which tier. So how I divided the tier, having 15 point total, 15 being the highest score that someone could get, and having basically all the tier lists divided in 5 tiers, I decided to divide this tier list as well in 5 tiers. And basically every tier was made by a total of 3 points. So S tier, it would be 15 to 13 points, A tier, it would be 12 points till 10, and so on, so on, so on. And here, as you can see, I divided them as well in the right color, so you can get an idea already which are the 5 characters that are in the S tier, which are the characters that are gonna be in the A tier, and so on and so on and so on. Now, while this solves the problem of dividing the characters into different tiers, it does not solve the problem that is still very important, and is organizing and putting this character in order. As we know, tier lists sometimes they're just messed around and they just divide the characters by tiers, but all these tier lists they were organized, which means that the character on the left, the closer to the tier category, was actually in a higher position than the character on his right. And I wanted to find a solution as well for this. And this is when the second part of the table comes into play. Now, this table works a bit different. As you can see here, there are bigger line, thicker line to divide different characters that have different score. So I grouped together the characters that had the same scores, because these are the characters that needed to be organized and put in the right order. Because if someone had 15 points and someone had 14 points and they were sharing the tier, obviously the 3 with 15 points were before the 2 in this case with 14 points. But how to organize this? Well, I came out with this idea. So after dividing the characters by groups depending on the points that they scored, I went to individually check on each tier list in which order they were appearing in this tier list, even if they were in different tiers, because it didn't matter anymore, as the tiers were already divided in our perfect tier list. Because even if in different tier lists, it meant that for that specific player, the character that was above the other, it was considered better. If you are talking about Jin, for instance, in Ulsan tier list, Jin was the third one in place if we make a chart between Yoshimitsu, Nin and Jin. For Arslan Ash the same, and for Rangju the same. And after this, I allocate basically their position, and I sum this position and I consider it as points as well. Same thing for Nina and same thing for Yoshimitsu. And this basically creates a kind of little chart system where the character that scored the least amount of points is actually the character that is considered the highest and the strongest in every single tier list as an average. And here you can see it's very clear, Yoshimitsu being considered the strongest by Rangchu and Ulsan and the second strongest by Arslan Ash. He scores 4 points, which means that generally speaking, Yoshimitsu in the 3 tier list is the one that is considered the stronger. And after done this, I repeated the process for every single one. In specific case, like Dragonov and Fang, being very simple because it's just 2 characters, and in other case be a bit more complicated. This said, there is still one kind of case that could happen where basically we have a draw into a draw, which is this case here between Lo and Shaheen, and there were other couples. As you can see, Lo and Shaheen, even if we go into this chart over here, there is still a situation where they are drawing in points. And even in this case, I still wanted to find a way that wasn't just, oh, they are drawing, I just place them over there. No, I tried to went all the way into kind of math in this tier list. So what I've done in this case is just checking which one was coming above the most. Between Lo and Shaheen, Ulsan thinks that Lo is stronger, Rangchu thinks that Lo is stronger, Arslan thinks that Shaheen is stronger. So in this case, because Lo is considered stronger twice, Lo is gonna be the one that ends up on top. After rinse and repeating this all the time, we get with what is the perfect tier list. Here you have it. Now, Clive is not in tier list because Arsenal did his tier list just after Clive was released, and I've seen where he was roughly and I have an idea as well where he will fall, and just to let you understand, he will fall roughly here. But this said, I didn't want, because I tried to stick to the number as much as I could, I really didn't want to just drop this character with an assumption of how strong Arsenal thinks or what is the general opinion on Clive, even if you know that he's very, very strong. Now, this said, the first thing is that we can see in this tier list is that the big three, Dragonov, the big four are still there, and Fang is generally considered the strongest character in the game after these four. Is the one that is considered one step ahead of everyone, and I kind of can see why. It's a kind of jack of all trades. I play the character as well. It's very funny, it's super strong, everything he does is strong. Everything. The only real problem he has is his hotkey doesn't have much range, but apart from that, everything is great. His poking is arguably the second best in the game after Nina. His wall carry is good. It's not great, but it's good. His combo damage is good. His shenanigans are insane. He has a lot of parries. He can create space. Backdashing is not a thing, but his back tempo is still there. He has 25 million sabaki and punch parries. The character is just insane and insanely solid. Then I will not spend many words on Yoshimitsu, Nina and Jin. I will just say that while Jin I think is the strongest into the ranked match play in the normal people gameplay, on the highest level you can see that Jin is considered generally the third best character after Yoshi and Nina, and it's probably because at the end of the day the player experience that this kind of competitors get is more offline, and they are very good at what they do, and they have incredible reflexes, which make Jin a weaker character than what he actually is when you play online, and Downsu is unreactable, and his L-sweep is unreactable, and his lows completely change to become very strong in something that is even more than that. I will not go character by character, it's more about seeing the results of this tier list, and you can see that he aligns kinda on what is the general opinion on a lot of tier lists, where you have basically this massive chunk of A tier where at the end of the day you can move in whichever order you want and people will agree. It's still part of the B tiers. The biggest difference between probably what I would call the commercial tier list, you know, the content creator tier list, the ranked experience tier list, and this one is that characters like Kazuya, Heihachi, Reina, where they become a bit weaker into competitive plays because of their execution and their clear weaknesses, they are one tier below. While if you play against an Heihachi in ranked, for me is up here in the tier, because it's insanely strong. But I can understand why they will never put it there. They understand the game way better than me, they know the game way better than me, and as well we saw, especially with a player like Keisuke, that Kazuya even be so strong in tournament play. It's a way more difficult character to achieve results with than every single one of those, and we have seen this. And if we check into the B tiers, basically all the usual suspects are there. At the end of the day, even if Arslan quoted Steve very strong, super strong up here, he ends up to be a very solid character in B tier. And I remember one day Chad the Third asked me which character for you should represent in this current power level the maximum level of power that a character should have. And it was a very good question, because we always said that the power creep in this game is a problem. And I remember my answer, and my answer was Paul. Even if I hate fighting Paul, because I always get caught by his panic moves, but they're very risky. But Paul is a very strong character. He's not weak at all. He's very strong. But when you say what Paul can do, you compare him to every single of these other characters, I think is really where there is a step in power between the two. Now, I will not change the tier, even if I think that this 4 should be up here, because these are results that comes by math, but I really see how there is a difference between Paul and below and Reina and above. For me is there, but you can make an argument that still Lee is very strong, Ju is very strong, Leo is very strong, Eddie, it takes big risks but is very strong. Every character is very strong. Then we go into the C tier, and the C tier is again the usual suspects with Lydia, Asuka, Susana, Lars, and Raven. And all characters, they rely a lot on 50-50s and big risks, so there's not much else to say. And Panda being there just because it's so... Panda should not be there. We all know, if we consider Panda as his own character, and the bear, and the chip damage and everything, he can make it in B tier. He's there because everyone considers him trash, because if you play Panda, you play Kuma, and Kuma is so much better than Panda is trash. Very simple. The funny thing that you can see in this tier list, in my opinion, the funniest thing, is the D category, which is Devil Jin. Now, in every single tier list, Devil Jin has been the only character that is scored 1 point. He's always been in the bottom tier every single time. This was actually Ulsan making the difference, because Panda scored 4 points because of Ulsan. Ulsan decided to put Panda in the second to last tier, while Devil Jin is alone in his only tier. He's considered by everyone on the top level of play the worst character in the game, which is insane, because Devil Jin has always been super strong in the past. It's very weird, because to the eyes of many, partially including mine, I see Devil Jin as a very, it's not strong, it's not very strong character, but he's a solid character. He gives you a lot in ranked, but I can see that he comes from the point of being kind of very gimmicky in what he does. He has a lot of mid-high string that I don't duck all the time, and he has probably the most annoying backswing blow in the game that at the end of the day is minus a million. So when you have this kind of tools and you rely a lot on this kind of tools, and he has probably the best 50-50, one of the best 50-50 out of hit engagers. But when you rely on this kind of tools to achieve your victories, and as well you have the Mishima card, you have all the Mishima toolkit, but you have character like these three, which are way better iterations of the Mishima archetype, and you need to rely on this tool to win at the highest level. Well, I can see why people would say that Devil Jin is the worst character in the game. But that's basically it, guys. This is the perfect tier list. I don't even know how to call it. I find it very interesting, and I find very interesting that at the end of the day it resembles what you see many times in tier list. Not obviously in exact placement, but you know, every character fell more or less where you were expecting it to. It feels like that, at least on the general power level of the game, there is an agreement, kind of, which character is good, which character is less good, because they're all good, and which character is very good. And it was very interesting to actually give some kind of math to these numbers, to actually sort them out in a way that is not just our feelings and our knowledge, but the knowledge of what are at the end the best performance of the game in 2024. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. I really want to see if someone manages to complain about this tier list. I would be very curious to see that, because at the end of the day, tier lists are always the most divisive way to express an opinion. But apart from that, I've been Dejan, you've been awesome, and I'll see you next time. Ciao!